Bovine ketosis. This is not a zoonotic disease. It is not caused by a pathogen, so it's not caused by a virus, it's not caused by a bacteria, it's not caused by fungi, a prion, or anything like that. This is basically a nutritional imbalance in cows that are calving. Basically, the body is burning fat. There's usually hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, and the body, as a result, is basically burning its fat reserves. And one of the byproducts of that is ketone bodies. This is usually uh, occurs in cows who are calving and are producing milk. A lot of times, the production of milk burns up all the energy, burns up all the sugar, and the body is forced to subsist on fat. In a population of cows, 60% of them are usually healthy and do not develop this. You have 30% who develop a subclinical form of ketosis. Basically, it means the symptoms are masked, and even though there is negative effects, it's a lot harder to detect. And only around 10%, you know, are clinical. Basically, an obvious and intense version of this disease that's immediately noticeable and immediately results in medical treatment. This developing ketosis is it basically unleashes a bunch of negative effects from reduced fertility. There's reduced milk production, and the cow is generally less healthy. It usually affects cows that have basically you know, a low dry matter intake. They generally also have, a high body condition score, which usually means the cow's obese, and some other things too, like multiparity, which is basically means that the cow has given birth several times, and poor transition nutrition. But yes, beyond the, yes, this also unleashes, the possibility of additional diseases such as metritis. And this is generally a massive negative economic concern that affects, the dairy industry and farming in general. It basically costs hundreds or more of dollars in like lost milk. Uh, it basically requires, the treatment of a veterinarian, and it can lead to things like culling of a cow that doesn't need to be culled. Basically, the loss of a milk producing cow due to a condition that's effectively very treatable. You could treat it with propylene glycol, which is effectively like the first line of therapy. You could do dextrose plus supportive care for like rapid temporary relief. And of course, but regardless of what treatment you do, you're also gonna have to address like the underlying issues. Ensure that the feed is proper, treat any concurrent diseases that might have erupted, and basically adjust transition nutrition. The current research and initiatives mainly focuses around artificial intelligence that can detect the subtle signs of ketosis, determine the probabilities, and basically help single out cows that are susceptible to this disease and make sure they are properly treated before, ketosis begins. Hopefully, saving countless amounts of money on, veterinary bills and having to treat the subsequent diseases that, come about due to the cows becoming more vulnerable. It must be emphasized that bovine ketosis is not a threat to humans. It's not going to result in, say, tainted food or tainted milk, or nor is it going to, produce any toxins or anything else that can negatively affect humans. The only real way it affects humans is basically economic losses for the farm, having to replace cold animals, having, to treat the condition, as well as increased prices for consumers because all these costs must be made up by the farm. The farm just can't take a loss like that, and thus the price must be passed on to the consumer. So those are the negative effects, for humans that, this form of ketosis, brings. It doesn't, directly, transmit or directly, impact the health of people. Diagnosis generally relies on detecting elevated blood B hydroxybutyrate, and that's because it's basically the most common, ketone body in the blood, and it's one of the easiest, ketone bodies to detect during ketosis. It's the most abundant. It's also means that, if you have like a mild case of ketosis or one that's just developing, this basically will help. These types of tests, could help detect it, as early as possible. It can not only be found in the blood, but it could also be found in the milk. Now, again, these ketone bodies in the milk isn't going to negatively affect humans, but it can result in another avenue of testing uh, of a cow that's suspected to have ketosis because it's going to end up in the milk. There could also be stuff like changes in the odor of the breath and, tests inside the mouth that could also be used to determine if a cow has elevated ketone bodies. So it doesn't always need to result in the extraction of blood. That's, of course, an avenue too. But there's also these other avenues that people could test to make sure that cases of ketosis, whether clinical or subclinical, are easily detected. Interestingly enough, with ketosis, you know, uh, the cow sometimes has like a higher body condition score, which means, of course, the cow's obese. But once ketosis sets in, especially the clinical subtype, one of the signs that could show up is rapid body condition loss because the fat is being burned. That's what's basically being used to create energy to keep the cow, alive and to keep it producing milk. So, with with the burning of the fat, usually if it gets severe enough or it's clinical or somebody has a keen eye, they can notice that the fat is like burning away even if the cow started out with a higher score of it. This rapid body condition loss is also one of the signs because of course there's a negative energy balance. Ketosis means there's a negative energy balance where the cow is using more energy for its bodily functions and for milk production than it is consuming. That's why it is a dietary issue. And this is why calving cows, especially, need to have, their feed checked to make sure it is getting as much, nutritional value from its feed and that it is eating its feed as possible. Because, again, this is a situation where the cow's using more energy than it's consuming. And that's a bad situation for pretty much any animal. But yeah, all in all, even though this doesn't bring health effects to humans, its economic impact and the hidden subclinical nature means that this is a disease, a problem that needs more attention. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. I think even more research on this disease is essential, both for the agricultural industry and the economic impact it has on consumers. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.